Welcome. Thank you for coming to practice with me. So, if you notice the invitation this week for this particular practice, uh, use the word centering. Centering is a word that yoga teachers like to use a lot, but what the heck does that mean anyway? Well, you might think of someone who is a bit more centered as self-resourced, but perhaps not only self-resourced, but someone who has an inner abundance, um, enough to share. So when we get started with our movements, we'll see if there's a felt sense of physically centering and where that takes us. So we're going to start seated. And if you're not all that comfortable sitting on the floor this morning, can vary day to day, let's be honest. You're welcome to sit in a chair, and for the first few moments here, maybe minutes, we'll be seated and the chair will work just fine, and then we'll move to the floor. So coming seated, either in a chair or on the floor. If you're on the floor, perhaps cross-legged, simple seated position. And then taking hands out to the side if you're on the floor, maybe hands down by the sides of the chair if you're in that place. And then we're going to do some side bending here. But rather than lifting your arm, tipping your head, see if you can tip your torso to the right. Tipping your torso to lift, arm to bring head and arm over, and coming on over a bit of a reach. And here's the interesting part, using that same torso engagement to come back over and on down. It's easy to let gravity take over, best you can. We'll just repeat that a couple times. So rather than hand lifting, head tipping, how about some engagement in your flank side muscles to tip your torso? Bring arm, head and neck over. And then some engagement in the torso to come on up. All right, one more time. Tipping to bring head, neck, and arm along. Tipping to bring head, neck, and arm along. So a couple of terms that will come in useful today, and those two terms are proximal and distal. So as we go to the other side and use your torso to lift arm and tip head and neck, the proximal end of my arm is my shoulder. The distal end of my arm is hand. So same thing we did on the other side, using torso, not only to lift arm and bring head and neck over, but when you come back down, using torso, there you go, using torso to come back up. Last one. See if you can move proximally, more from the core, more from the torso. And then coming back on. All right. So staying seated for just a moment. And if you're seated in a chair, perhaps just bringing hands to knees. But if you're on the floor like I am, bringing hands forward in front of you, and then using your abdominal muscles to tip your core forward, and perhaps walking fingers forward on the floor. Rounding in your spine. Now using back muscles to stack your spine, tip your core, coming back up. So rather than moving from your head, yeah, that's the natural, perhaps the more predominant way to move, moving more proximally and be engaging your abdominal muscles to come forward. Have you ever played checkers? You know, when you capture your opponent's checkers, you can stack them up. Stacking your spine in the same way to come on up. Spine stacking brings you back up. Last one. So, abdominal engagement, perhaps tipping you forward, and spinal stacking to bring you back up. All right. Yeah, so now if you're in the chair, you can keep your hands on your knees. If you're on the floor here, we'll go hands to knees as well. So some torso circles. But again, rather than leading with your head and neck, how about some abdominal engagement to bring your torso forward and some engagement to come around to the side and back up and over to the other side. So torso circles. Best you can, making this movement proximally rather than from your head. Then going in the other direction. We'll just do a couple. Kind of in warm-up mode, just getting familiar with these terms and moving proximally. Last one coming around and coming up. All right, pausing there. Just checking my torso or my notes here for a moment. Let's just come seated with knees bent and soles of the feet on the floor. And then extending your right leg out along the floor, grabbing in behind your left knee. And we're going to lower ourselves down here using this leg that we've grabbed as a lever. So begin to round your spine and come back on down. And you are in control of how far down you go and how far back up you come using that leg as a lever to help lift you up. Perhaps you've already noticed some abdominal engagement. Moving best you can proximally, perhaps tipping hips to come down, abdominal engagement to come up. And some of us may be noticing abdominal engagement. Some of us may be noticing how spine, back rolls out along the floor. Last one will come up and then we'll go to the other side. Yeah. So now it's left leg straight out, right leg, grab it in behind. Yeah. So we've done this many times, but a little bit different intention would be abdominal engagement. And leg as a lever to roll spine down to the floor. And again, you're in control of how far down you roll and how far up you come. How far you move is not as important as that you notice proximal engagement, abdominal engagement, perhaps even spine rolling out along the floor. Some of us are aware of one, some the other. Some of us may be aware of both. Next time we come up, we'll just, you know what, we'll come up. If you're up, just let yourself come on back down. So coming on back down, and then taking right leg out along the floor, bringing left leg, thigh bone perpendicular so that you can put your hand on top of your knee. I know the invitation is to draw a circle on the ceiling with your hand and your knee. Noticing internally, what if any abdominal engagement, proximal movement, proximal being more in the hip socket, distal being hand and knee. What, if any, proximal movement, hip, core movement, engagement, and now taking your hand away, making those same circles and perhaps finding a little bit more proximal engagement. And then just taking that bent leg foot up towards the ceiling and a couple of whole leg circles, best you can, moving proximally from where leg meets torso. And you're in control of how fast you go, how big that circle may or may not be, but again, how quick, how big, not all that is important as proximal engagement. Some, if any. Let's go to the other side. Just taking that leg down, bringing the other leg up, hand on knee, knee and hand pointing towards the ceiling. Same thing on this side. We begin with, more of a distal movement, isn't it? Hand and knee. And then when you remove your hand, see if, oh, there it is. There's just a bit more proximal engagement. Felt sense of physically being centered. And if you haven't already, just go in the other direction with that circle, maybe once or twice. And then taking that foot up towards the ceiling, whole leg circles. Best you can make, there you go, making this movement from where the leg meets the torso. Yeah, easier said than done. And that awareness can slip away. When it does, just recognize, redirect, and resume proximal awareness. Leg to torso awareness. All right, bringing that leg on down. Rolling to one side. Let's see here. I'm just going to come seated for a moment. We may go back down to the floor right away. In fact, we will. Let's go back down. That same position you were in just a moment ago, with knees bent and soles of the feet on the floor. And this time it's hands down by your hips, but out to the side just a bit, maybe a foot or so. And then turning arms so that palm faces the ceiling. And perhaps you've already noticed how that begins to flatten shoulder blades against the floor. So this next invitation to movement can easily be overdone. Drawing those shoulder blades lightly underneath you. If you find your lower back reaching up towards the ceiling, you've done it just a little bit too much. So finding that middle ground where shoulder blades are lightly drawn under, but lower back is more or less neutral. And then whichever is your non-dominant arm, bringing that arm out to shoulder height, sliding it along the floor, and then suspending it off the floor. And from the proximal end of your arm, the shoulder joint, see if you can keep shoulder blade on the floor as you bring that arm up. So moving best you can from proximal end of the arm while shoulder blade stays pretty much connected to the floor. Up and down just one more time. So especially lowering down moving from shoulder joint, coming back up. All right, while that arm is up towards the ceiling, taking the proximal end of that upper arm bone, humerus, drawing it down to the floor, and then just moving your whole arm in a kind of a sideways figure eight, infinity symbol. Draw on that figure on the ceiling. Yeah, moving best you can from proximal end of the arm, shoulder blade on the floor. All right. Let's extend that arm back out, lowering it down. And then we'll go to the other side. So maybe not so much time on this side, but let's first reset those shoulder blades. So arms on the floor, palms to the ceiling, drawing shoulder blades lightly underneath you. Then taking that other arm, dominant arm down, out to the side. And from the shoulder joint, lifting the arm up as shoulder blade stays connected to the floor. So up and down just a couple times. Next time you come up, perhaps taking the humeral head, proximal end of the upper arm bone down to the floor, and then making that figure eight, sideways figure eight on the ceiling. And seeing if you can initiate that movement from where arm meets torso rather than from your hand. Sometimes helps to close your eyes. Oh, there you go. To bring that awareness more proximally. And then we'll just let that arm come on down, out to the side, all the way down. And now drawing your knees in. Now rolling to one side. And now coming up on hands and knees. Yeah. So I'm just going to turn sideways here so you can see me just a bit better. And then we'll start here with hands under shoulders, knees under hips. And pushing those hands into the floor kind of brings your shoulder blades around the sides of your torso, rounding between your shoulder blades. That's called, I forget what it's called. And then going the other way, drawing shoulder blades together. Yeah. So we've got protracting. Yeah, that's what it is. Protracting back, rounding a bit between the shoulder blades, retracting, shoulder blades coming together so that you can more or less find middle ground. So once you found that middle ground, then taking left arm and bringing it back, straight back towards your left knee, palm towards the ceiling, and suspending it just off the floor. Perhaps you've already noticed how there's a bit of torso engagement, abdominal engagement, and then from your shoulder joint, if possible, lifting that arm, palm up towards the ceiling and bringing it back on down towards the floor, not touching the floor, really keeping the movement more proximal in the shoulder joint where arm meets torso. Some of us perhaps noticing how hand and knee contact the floor, there's some abdominal engagement. Perhaps some of us noticing how this movement can be made more proximally. Perhaps some of us noticing both. All right, next time arm comes down, then just taking the arm out to the side. Now palm towards the floor. And same lifting just a few times. Same awareness. Perhaps contact with the floor. Perhaps noticing your core. Let's take that arm out to a 45-degree angle in front, little finger to the floor, thumb to the ceiling, and bringing that arm up. So you might be wondering, well, this is all pretty good stuff, I guess, but we haven't done any yoga poses yet. Not to worry, they're coming. All right, let's go to the other side. Not so much time on this side, not so many repetitions. So now it's opposite arm, palm to the ceiling, fingertips, fingernails towards the floor, and suspending it off the floor. So we're not touching the floor as we come down. We're just trying to make this movement more or less from shoulder rather than from hand. And it's inevitable that awareness slips away. Even as arm comes out to the side now, palm to the floor, awareness slips away from that proximal area. Just recognize, redirect, and resume. And now arm out in front, 45-degree angle, thumb to the ceiling, like you were going to shake hands, and up and down a few times. So always good to have an intention, but sometimes intentions can be a little bit constricting. So maybe just a light awareness. Last time up and down. All right. Come into hands and knees. So bringing your knees back, a good 5 or 6 inches, and curling your toes under. We're headed for a little bit different version of dog pose here. Something that's been labeled as 21st century dog. And that's just bringing these up perhaps 4, 5, 6 inches off the floor, shins parallel to the floor. And then taking hips back behind you, drawing hips out of your hands. And then bringing hips back forward. Yeah, so shins stay parallel to the floor. Maybe you've already noticed, especially when you go back, that there's some abdominal engagement. Inviting that awareness to the center. And the next time you go back, staying there, and now bringing shins from parallel, hips drawing out of your hands, coming on up. Good old downward facing dog. Does that abdominal engagement, proximal engagement, stay with you as you come to this dog pose? All right. We'll explore that again. So let's just come on down to hands and knees for now. And stepping forward, forward, fold. And on an inhale, sweep up, stacking your spine. All the way up, all the way up. Yeah, so as I said earlier, intentions are fine. It's good to study, but it can be a little bit constricting, can't it? Let's just be free to move through a couple of sun salutations. And you notice for yourself internally, whether you're beginning to move more proximally or more distally. Let's give it a try. So there could be some proximal movement even as arms lift out to the side, couldn't there? Yep, there could. And there could be proximal movement as you tip your torso and come folding all the way over. And then you tip your hips to lift torso, neck, and head. Tip your hips to come upside down. Coming to hands and knees. Knees coming back. We'll just head right away for downward facing dog. What, if any, proximal engagement might there be? And then just coming back to hands and knees. Stepping forward, forward, fold. And free to sweep up right here. Yeah. Let's do one more of those. And just noticing on your own, perhaps where that engagement spark for movement might initiate. Sweeping out, folding over, hips tipping, hands and knees, downward facing dog. I know I have some salutation. Let's just come right back to hands and knees. Stepping forward, fold. How about a little bit of a hip tip here? Some proximal movement to lift neck and head. And now rather than neck and head dropping, hips tipping, proximal movement to bring you upside down. Here's an opportunity to stack your spine like stacking checkers. Coming up one vertebra at a time, all the way up. There you go. All right. Let's see here. So coming up to standing, more or less in the center of your mat. So you may have noticed I have a nice carpeted floor here. So I really have no need for my yoga mat. And of course, depending on where you are, you may need one. Or you may feel you don't. That choice is always yours. How about bringing hands to heart, just fingertips together? And the invitation then is to shift your grounding into your right leg, and then taking that left foot forward a bit and beginning to draw it back along the floor as if you were wiping something off the bottom of your foot. Rather than thinking about the energy for this movement coming from way down there distally at your foot, what if this movement could be made the spark for this movement coming, yep, there you go, more proximally where leg meets torso, perhaps even abdominal. Let's go to the other side. So same thing on that side. Foot comes forward just a bit and then swipes back along the floor. Perhaps noticing what, if any, engagement enables this movement. Is it really distal or is it more proximal? The movements in general, we think of moving our hands, moving our feet, moving our head, but physiology, spark for those movements might initiate somewhere entirely different. All right, so headed for that promised yoga pose. Here it comes. Yeah, good old chair pose. I'm going to turn sideways again for just a moment. Remember that swiping back we did just a moment ago? In addition to that, we're going to spark just a little bit of distal movement, heels getting light, and see if that invites some proximal movement, freeing knees and hips. And now as feet swipe back from proximal engagement, coming into chair pose. Feet continue to swipe back from proximal engagement as you come back up. It's a little different feeling, isn't it? Heels light, distal engagement invites proximal engagement to bring you into chair pose. Let's not overthink it. How about arms straight out in front of you? And now some proximal movement in the shoulders to bring arms up. And we'll just push down to come up. Hands to heart. We'll add the twists this time. So it's heels a bit light, feet swiping back, brings you into chair pose. And then how about right hand to left knee? Left hand comes behind. And a bit of a turn to the torso. Just a bit. Yeah, not the biggest turn ever. You decide, you're in control of how far you want to twist this morning. And let's go right away to twisting on the other side. How about that? As you come on out. And then it's left hand to right knee, right hand comes behind. And turning your torso rather than your head. So that might be the challenge as we come back out. Rather than leading with your gaze with your head, what if you just suspended your hands for a moment and then let your torso bring head and neck along for your eye. And then you extended your arms up overhead, pushing down to come up. All right. Yeah. So let's just be free to move through a half sun salutation. Noticing on your own, what, if any, proximal engagement there might be. As arms sweep, and torso tips and folds. As torso lifts and folds again. And as you find hands and knees and eventually downward facing dog. All right. Back to hands and knees. Stepping forward, fold. And here's an opportunity perhaps for proximal movement. Getting ready and then just sweeping on up. Arms to the side. Okay. Just maybe a couple more standing poses. So let's take a wide stride. And well, this time let's put hands on hips. Yeah. And turn right toes in for you and left toes up. Mm-hmm. So here we are. We've been here many times. Inviting this front knee to bend and hip to flex. We're going to begin with a little bit of distal movement, heel getting light, perhaps even lifting just a bit off the floor. Invites knee to bend, knee to flex and hips, hip socket to flex. And then proximal movement, tipping your torso tipping. And then bring a hand to shin just below your knee. So here we are with that front knee still flexed, front hip still flexed. We got this free arm, right arm on our hip. What would it be like to take that free arm up towards the sky from your shoulder joint? Yeah, hand not leading the way, shoulder lifting to bring it on. Yeah, so front knee is still flexed, isn't it? We're not quite to triangle pose yet, are we? How about moving from your hips to draw hips out of that front foot, straightening the front knee just a bit. Mm-hmm. And even a bit more proximal engagement, taking that back leg, right leg, rotating it, kneecap taking a peek at the front foot. All right. No need to overdo it. Let's, from the shoulder, release that upper arm down. And invite the front knee to flex. And push down to come up. And go right away to the other side. Left toes turn in, right toes turn out. Mm-hmm. Inviting knee to flex and hips to free up with a little bit of distal movement, heel lifting. Yeah, see how that is? There you go. Invites knee to flex and hips to flex. And now actually tipping your torso. Torso bringing head and neck along for the ride. Hand to shin, arm coming up. So how about it? Moment of truth. That arm up, did it move from your hand or your shoulder? That's not to say that one is right and one is wrong. Just a bit of a different awareness. So here we are, only part way there in triangle pose. What if you took your hips and drew them up and back, up and back, up and back, moving from hips and torso to straighten the front knee. And then that back leg rotating forward, kneecap peeking that front foot. Yeah. And so, choice here, you could either take your gaze towards the floor or the ceiling, or you could leave it looking right straight ahead, just like this. Let's not overdo it. Arm's got to come down, doesn't it? So there's an opportunity to move proximally as the arm comes down. An opportunity to move proximally as the front knee flexes. An opportunity as perhaps torso comes up first and then knee straightens, bringing feet together. Let's just free everything up with a quick movement, sun salutation. Coming up and folding over. Beautiful lift and coming upside down. And we'll just quickly visit downward facing dog. Dog pose. Noticing what, if any, abdominal gain there might be in dog pose. And coming right back up to standing. So stepping forward, forward fold. And from here, we'll come right up. All right. Got a little bit out of sequence here, so we'll head for the floor one more time. Yeah, but here's an opportunity on your own to see how movement can be sparked, whether distally or proximally. In a bit of a sweep up, tip and a fold, a bit of a lift and a fold again. Coming to hands and knees. And let's just visit downward facing dog very briefly. Knees coming back, good 5 or 6 inches. And then a quick visit to dog pose. Perhaps some of us aware proximal engagement. Coming back to hands and knees, and now it's bringing your right foot forward up between your hands and straightening that back leg and bringing forearms to thigh, aligning torso, neck, and head with the angle of your back leg, bringing hands to heart. So here's an option. Perhaps staying right here for a moment, or perhaps if you choose, moving proximally from shoulder joints to bring arms up overhead, extending them into that same alignment with the back leg. And then if arms are up, bringing them back to heart. And now, tipping your torso. Torso coming up. There you go. Moving proximally. And now moving proximally again. That front leg, bent leg, flexed leg. Bringing that hip up and back to straighten the front knee. And then inviting the front knee to bend, getting light in the heel. Yeah. And then just one more time, up and down. Drawing hip up and back to straighten the front knee. Getting light in the front foot heel to flex the front knee. And here's another opportunity. Arms coming up. Well, how about out first? And then up. Just a bit of a pause here before you, yeah, you guessed it, tip at your torso. So rather than hands and head meeting, launching yourself forward from your torso to come on down, come back to hands and knees, and right away, a little relief in downward facing dog. Just a moment. And we'll quickly go to the other side. Same movements on that side. Now it's left foot forward, right leg straightens, forearms to thigh, hands to heart. And here's that opportunity for arm movement that's more proximal. And here's that opportunity, bringing hands back to heart, opportunity for torso to come vertical, an opportunity for hip to draw up and back, and for distal movement getting light in the front foot heel to invite proximal engagement. Knee and hip flexing. So just up and down one more time. Next time we come down. Almost done. Then it's arms forward and arms up. Yeah. And rather than leading with your hands in your head, dipping your torso, launching yourself forward, hands to the floor, hands and knees, downward facing dog. Yeah, just a quick visit. Coming back to hands and knees. Let's see here. I think I have scheduled a little bit more than we can possibly do, but let's give it a try. How about coming to a prone position and bringing your breastbone as close to the floor as possible. Helps to stick your chin out forward first, and then draw nose and chin in. They're just off the floor. So we're headed for some back bends here. Back bends can be a bit of a strain on lower back without some centering, some grounding more proximally. How about rotating your thighs so that toes point away from each other, heels point towards each other. Perhaps even heels come together just like, noticing how that already there is some proximal engagement. And now, hands are mostly back by your rib cage. Forearms more or less perpendicular. And drawing back on the heel of your hand to lift torso, neck, and head just a bit. And lowering yourself back on down. From that engagement in the center, lifting torso, neck, and head come along for the ride. Same thing going back down. All right. Let's take arms out to the side in a kind of a goal post position. I'll turn sideways so you can see me a little bit better. And now we're going to rotate our arms from the shoulder joint so that forearm and hand lift off the floor. So forearm and hand coming off the floor, but rather than lifting your hand to do it, see, oh, there it is, rotating in the upper back in the shoulder joint to go up and down just a couple times, up and down. All right. The next time arms come down, forearms and palms are on the floor. From that same upper back proximal arm engagement, drawing back on your elbows, elbows drawn back down towards your feet to lift torso, neck, and head. There you go. So rather than lifting from your head. You're lifting from somewhere else. All right, coming back on down. Stacking hands, resting your forehead, letting your legs rest as well. Just checking my notes here while you are resting and checking the time. Let's come to hands and knees, and we'll come to a kind of a on your side position here. Laying down on your side with knees drawn up at a 90-degree angle to your torso, and then lower legs at a 90-degree angle to thighs. So feet are down there at 90 degrees and 90 degrees right here. Lower flank, side light on the floor, if not lifted off the floor. So here's an opportunity for some proximal movement. What if you were to rotate your thighs towards the floor to lift your feet off the floor? And back on down. So rather than lifting your feet, rotating your thighs, oh, there it is. Perhaps some proximal engagement. Last one, coming on out. All right. Now with both feet down, just the upper leg moving this time. And from the hip socket, lifting that bent 90-degree upper leg off the lower leg and letting it come back on down. So what, if any, deep hip engagement might there be? What, if any, core engagement might there be? So here's another example of the movement we think, well, we're moving our feet. Where does the spark for that movement come from? Yeah. Whether you recognize it in daily life or not, it comes from a little bit closer to the center. That abundance of self-resourced energy. Yeah, it's there. All right, let's just quickly do the other side. So I'm going to swap hand sides here. You could just roll over and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Flank a bit lifted off the floor or light on the floor. And there's that 90-degree aspect to torso, thighs, and lower leg. And then it's rotating thighs to lift your feet. And we'll just go up and down maybe 3 times. You're in control of how high you lift, how quickly you go. Last one, so we'll keep their feet down. And the same thing as you initiate this movement from your hip socket, you are in control of how quickly you go, how far you lift. Remember our intention to bring awareness more proximally. It's easily slipped away, hasn't it? Perhaps. Just recognize, redirect, resume a light awareness. Oh, there it is. Yep, hip, deep hip muscles working. All right. Ready for a traditional yoga pose? It's about time, isn't it? Coming up soon. Left leg straight out. We're headed for half fish twist. And for some of us, that means that this flexed leg is going to come up and cross over. For some of us, it may mean that that foot stays right where it is alongside the outstretched leg on the inside. So if you're choosing to bring that leg up and over, rather than moving your foot or your knee, how about if you made the spark of that movement a little bit more proximal, where thigh meets torso to bring the flow. And then take an opposite arm, either grasping with your hand or wrapping your arm and rotating into the flexed knee. So as I said earlier, intentions are fine, but sometimes they're easily overdone and rather than open our awareness, kind of constrict our awareness. As you prepare to come out of this twist, see where the spark for the movement begins. Perhaps letting torso lead the way and neck and head just come along for the ride. As you unwind, release your arm and come on up. Let's go to the other side. So again, here's some opportunity. If you choose to move more proximally, that would be if foot comes up and over, moving from where thigh meets torso. Oh, isn't that interesting? And then opposite arm, grasping the flex knee. And on your own, just your own exploration, where does the spark for this movement come from? Is it more distal or more proximal? The same awareness as we come out, just a light awareness, not a constricting, concentrated, focused awareness. Light, open awareness. That's you. Release to come out. Okay, so headed for the floor. One final twisting pose, that's that supine twist, laying down twist. And it engages in ways that are very similar to things we've done already. And perhaps you'll notice that as you do the movement. Coming onto your side. We've been here before. And as if you were sleeping on your side with knees drawn up, in a kind of a 90-degree fashion. And then opportunity for some proximal movement could be taking that upper arm, free arm, up towards the ceiling. An opportunity for some proximal movement could be, rather than hand, arm, head, and neck leading the way, torso leads the way, opening towards the ceiling, coming on over. And just noticing with light, open awareness, our intention, especially as you choose to come out where the spark for that movement comes from. Is it more proximal or more distal? So there you go, felt sense of physical centering. And then here's an opportunity in the arm for proximal movement. Arm coming down. All right. So that was pretty slow. So you're in control of how fast you do these movements. But remember, how fast, how big is not really the intention of the practice today. It's more our intentional awareness, but within that scope, a light awareness, an open awareness of how movements originate almost automatically by themselves. Go on to the other side if you choose. Directing your awareness in a light, an open way, as you found yourself in that open position, torso facing the ceiling. just taking a moment to notice what, if any, engagement there is and where it might be in terms of muscles working. So we've got to come out eventually, don't we? In your own time, moving as quickly or as slowly as you choose. Seeing where the spark for this movement is going to come from as we unwind from land down twist. All right. So perhaps finishing a little bit early today. Couple minutes, 2-3 minutes early. Just coming onto your back with knees bent, soles of the feet on the floor. And you can keep your knees flexed, feet on the floor if you wish, or you could have legs straight out. Whichever you choose for the last minute or so of practice. And without any particular intention, just drawing awareness to the felt sense of being here now. Is that felt sense center more proximally or more distally? More in torso, abdominal area, shoulder area, or more in feet and hands, perhaps head. Just a moment of recognition. Where's your center now? All right. If eyes are closed, slowly, gradually opening your eyes. So here comes some movement. We got to come seated, don't we? Yeah. Wouldn't it be interesting to lightly study how that movement originates? As you tip to the side, as you push down to come up, as you come seated. Yeah. So, we'll pause a moment for everyone to come seated. They could be seated on the floor, or again, if floor is not all accessible this particular time, sitting in a chair is fine too, just for the last moment or so. And we'll take a collective inhale. Arms coming up, hands to heart. Namaste. Thanks for coming to practice.